Welcome, Libra. It's your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 2nd of March. This is for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. I'm going to share with you the big themes of the week to begin with. On screen is your event chart on Monday. I'll unpack that. That's always influential for the whole week. I'll then go through each of the influences frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what you can expect in terms of finance, relationships, energy, and work. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now. On Monday, Mars, the planet of thrust and assertion, moves into a practical part for you of your situation for the next 6 weeks. How's that going to impact you? On Tuesday, however, we have a total lunar eclipse, the only one of the year in the practical Virgo, which is going to provide a dynamic backdrop for us all for 6 months. What's the implications for you, Libra? Then we have the Sun and Jupiter forging a very strong alliance as the week goes on, which could be especially helpful to you personally. But we do have Venus, your ruler, moving into your opposite sign on Friday, merging initially with the dreamy, mystical Neptune, but also the cool energies of Saturn. What does that mean? So on the screen now is your event chart. As ever, we need to look at your ruling planet. So there's Venus at the start of the week, still exalted in the sign of Pisces, but in that practical sixth house. But she is forging a delightful link to Uranus. If you wanted to approach your financial situation, the eighth house can be long-term financial planning, or do something that was more entrepreneurial. Your natural good taste, but also the style with which you approach that opportunity could really see you make progress. We also need to look at the most northerly player in the chart. That's always key. And for you, it is Jupiter. Jupiter continues his retrograde, which began just under 4 months ago. He will go direct on the 11th of March. Please look out for your unique video for that. But as this week goes on, as the sun moves forward, he is going to tune into that Jupiter position in a very lovely trine, one of astrology's most positive aspects. So I'll tell you about that shortly. And just finally, Mercury, the planet of communication, that is still retrograde through to March the 20th. So even though that sixth house is very active and it can be to do with the details of things, you really need to focus and not get too distracted. And that brings us to early on Monday. Because if you recall, late last week, Mars and Uranus forged an exact square. I did predict that we would see some dramatic events, but certainly a lot of brittleness and maybe some triggering energy. And as we go into this week, the moon is in the sign of Leo, but joins in on that what is then a separating square between these two. So it's possible, maybe around a financial situation, you're waiting to hear news, you don't feel that someone's being very fair. It really could be very frustrating. But later on Monday, Mars moves into Pisces. Now, because Mars, for its rulership of Aries, is very much about action and fiery, the water host of Pisces doesn't quite know what to do with Mars. It's known as being peregrine. However, what you can do is just be determined to use the sensory energy of Pisces, which can be to do with instinct, but apply the energy of Mars in some kind of practical way, which gives you an outcome that is positive. Now, that could be, for example, swimming. Mars can be about activities, Pisces can be about the water, of course, and the sixth house can be about getting fitter. But equally, if you wanted to just be more virtuous around what you ate or drank, Mars just gives you more feist to take on that challenge. But on Tuesday, that total lunar eclipse, the moon will have moved forwards pretty close to the south node and at 12 degrees is opposite the sun. But for you, it's the 12th house. So as much as these energies in Pisces, the stellium, which is being complemented by them by Mars, very much about practicalities with a sensitivity. Having the moon in the practical Virgo, we get the reverse, the mirror reflection. So being in touch with your instincts, but also the need for psychological well-being is really what you're being asked to do by that lunar eclipse over the next 6 months. So however much you try to get more virtuous about what time you get to bed, how much exercise you have, what you eat and drink, essentially the total lunar eclipse is saying don't forget your emotion, your psychological and your spiritual dimension, because they will feed into your physical well-being as much as anything else. Now, as the week goes on, the sun moves forwards and comes into a trine with Jupiter. Because the sun is in the sixth house, which can be about jobs, Jupiter rules traditionally the sign of Pisces, so we have a mutual receptivity. And a Jupiter trine with the sun is one of astrology's potentially most fortunate aspects. If you are applying for a new job or waiting to hear about an application or you're doing a presentation, the chances are, as long as you stay in touch with the more emotional dimension, so the atmosphere, how you really feel, but put across your ideas with confidence and conviction, a good outcome is possible for you. And remember, with Venus in that dazzling link with Uranus at the start of the week, don't be fearful of demonstrating to people how forward thinking and innovative you can be. Yet by the end of the week, by Friday, Venus moves forwards, goes across your seventh house cusp in whole sign astrology, and connects with the shimmering energies of Neptune. If there is someone you really, really like, and you make a connection at this time, and they're as sincere as you are, you know, both of you want the same thing, don't feel that Saturn can only bring problems. What Saturn can do is bring a bacon of commitment. But it's true that if there is a relationship which hasn't been working very well, and one of the things that may have been aggravating you is if you're more conscientious than the other person, if you live together around the domestic chores, for example. But Venus moving into that area, though technically detrimented in the sign of Aries, could give you a push if you're single over the next 4 weeks to be more proactive. But it does need to get beyond these two to really free up the space, because you could doubt your attractiveness or your worthiness, because that's what Saturn can do. Or there could, in an existing relationship, be some confusion, or someone may seem cool, distant, or preoccupied. All of these different options are possible. But if you did go on that first date and really connected with one another, don't believe it can't work out for you just because you meet on Venus conjunct Saturn. It could be completely the opposite. It just means that you're both very much up with the right person to be totally all in, and Saturn will support that. To understand what March holds for you, please click on the screen for that. To understand what the total lunar eclipse means for you, Libra, please click on that screen. And if you would like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. You can also take advantage of my unique offer of your personal forecast and life roadmap report, totally unique to you. And at the checkout, please apply Astro 26 and you'll get 50% off. If you'd like to understand more about the draconic version of those charts, very much to do with your soul karmic journey, please apply Draco 26 at the checkout.